Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. With Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Well, good morning everybody and welcome to today's show. You may notice a little bit of a change to today's show because I have the pleasure today of being joined by a very good friend of mine and a friend of the podcast and myself and Curtis with David Billsborough back onto the podcast. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Phil, and delighted to be back on again. Of course, last time I was on was when you were away,
Yes.
and I think now it's Curtis's turn, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Curtis is enjoying a few days in the sun as we get the bit of a. I think we get the tailwind of a bit of a storm out with the weather changing in the next couple of days. But yeah, he's enjoying a few deserved break, a few days in the sun before we enter the wintry period of the year.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
But yeah, I think for listeners that today we're going to change the structure a little bit because we've got David on now. We can't have David on without talking about the market. So we're going to chat through some of the headlines that have hit the news this week and get a view on it with myself and David. And then the second half of the show, I'm just going to chat with David and talk about the market in general, what we're seeing, what we're hearing from a wholesale trade perspective and retail and demand and just general conversation. So do please to stay tuned for the second half. I think we'll look forward to that one, David. I think we're going to have a little bit of a chat about the general market.
We can certainly talk, can't we, about the used cars? I think between the two of us, we've got a little bit of experience. Yes.
We'll put the world to rights. So we're in a period now, September's just finished, so we can talk about, September, what's been happening in that month. I don't know if anybody's been seeing a lot of new cars on the road yet, or they're still yet to be collected and delivered, but we will talk about that a little bit later.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our dedicated supplier specials episodes, get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
So, as always, companies that are already featured in our supplier special include Prospecting Dynamics, iVendi, ETT, Generational, Tracker, MTC, Jigcar, Checkvic, CarCare, and AutoChat. So if you are a supplier and you're interested in sharing your profile of your business, then please do get in touch with either myself or Curtis. You can find us both on LinkedIn or any of the social media channels.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
So as I say, first half of today's podcast, we're going to cover a few of the headlines coming from Car Dealer Mag with the latest on JLR, that JLR confirms controlled phased restart of operations as firm looks to recover from hack. We'll follow that with an FT story, which is JLR's government loan guarantee should come with strings. And over to AM Online, which is EV pre-registrations expected to surge by the end of this year. And then we've got a few dealer updates, a couple of financial updates from Big Motoring World, Cargiant and Vindis. So, as I say there, we'll get onto these stories now and chat through some of these with Dave. So, I mean, David, the first story is really, I mean, the whole thing, it's probably 5 or 6 weeks now since it started with the hack, the cyber attack on JLR, and Car Dealer have covered the story that JLR confirms controlled phased restart of operations as firm looks to recover from hack. And obviously this is talking about the production will recommence at JLR sites in the coming days. Wolverhampton engine factory will be the first plant to come back on stream, and that this controlled phased restart is to begin after a 1.5 billion business continuation loan back by the government, which we'll get onto in a minute. But I mean, this has been terrible for the sector, hasn't it, David?
Well, when you were just introducing that story, I just could not, the enormity of what has actually happened to GLR it's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of issues it's caused them. Well, it's completely shut them down, hasn't it? It's just incredible.
And it's not. I mean, the thing is as well. I mean, you'll know this that there's obviously the hit at GLR themselves in terms of that production, but it's the whole supply chain, the knock-on effect through that supply chain, the employment in the area, the number of people that rely on JLR and the supply chain for their jobs, and then you go into the retail space and the dealers in the month of September. They just had no new vehicle product to be able to sell and deliver an invoice.
And with Jaguar already in transition as a company, then this on top of that is just incredible. I think nobody deserves that, and obviously, I guess the whole purpose of the hack was to extortionate some money from them. Really, I guess,
Yeah,
but who
yeah.
knows?
We don't know if that's happened, do we? I suppose with
No,
this.
no, we don't know. We don't know. But you imagine if that at that level, that it would be the intention, wouldn't it, of the hackers? I guess.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, as I say, I mean, hopefully, I mean, every time we've talked about this story over the last few weeks on the podcast, the complexity of getting restarted because everything just stopped. They were left in a position that vehicles were just left partway through the production supply chain. Supplied parts that were in holding factories were just stopped because they just couldn't do any invoicing. There were no systems they could do anything to move the product around, and they've got to get all this going again. Where these vehicles have just stopped partway through a production, or there's creditors that need paying, etc. And that's right across the whole production process and through the supply chain.
So no, that's a very good point you've made about the supply chain, because obviously those people, those businesses have staff themselves and need to be paid. So that's probably what's sort of made the decision on behalf of the company via the government, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, because it is. I mean, it is the whole impact is. There's one thing looking at it from the in terms of being able to invoice and deliver cars, and the other side is like 5 weeks coming into the sixth week now of they've just got no work to do. There's no jobs there for people to do, and that's through the whole JLR production and through the supply chain. And you mentioned there about the government loan, and that's kind of leads into the FT, the Financial Times story, and this is that JLR's government loan guarantee should come with strings, and this is saying that an essential condition of the car maker's bailout ought to be that a second bailout won't be needed. Now, this is getting a little bit detailed now because obviously there was reports that prior to the government's announcement of the 1.5 billion support loan, the loan guarantee, was that JLR or Tata had actually secured a 2.1 billion loan through three banks, I believe, obviously at a higher rate of return and cost to JLR. And there's questions now whether the involvement from the government was necessary to support this. Obviously, I think you and I were talking about this. What are the terms? What is the condition of payback? How much is it going to cost? The taxpayer, I suppose, is the big question. But also within the story, they do highlight that the Tata shares have seen no change. They've not been affected by this at all, which we would expect with something of this scale. But Tata has been unaffected. I mean, what's your thoughts around this one, David?
Well, not wishing to get too political, but I think I think personally, on listening to what you just said and my own thoughts about this, they're basically too big to fail, aren't they? Yes, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think that the enormity of a company like that failing would be just too much to bear for the economy at the moment. So the government really, I suppose, has no choice but to step in, I guess. In terms of their shares not being affected so far, then I suppose from a strength point of view, we want a strong company to come out of this, don't we? So that's the bit I would try and focus on, the fact that if we can have GLR still being strong and being able to get back into production and fully up to speed before Christmas, shall we say, then that's got to be good for the economy of this country, hasn't it, really?
It has, yeah. I mean, obviously, he's saying away from the export side of it, because obviously, a large proportion of the Range Rover, Land Rover product does get exported and exported to the US, and we'll keep away from the Trump tariff debate, David, today, because that changes daily anyway. But you're right. I think generally, it is one of our key manufacturers in the UK. In terms of domestic manufacturing and export manufacturing, and we know, obviously, we touched on it in the previous story, that the heavy reliance on labour in the areas that rely on the GLR supply chain and production, that, as you say there, it's a key element for the UK government to make sure that this business remains and recovers as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
Which you can understand that, can't you?
yeah. I think it goes against the grain to some people because it's a private company, isn't it? It's not a government-owned company, and it's obviously taxpayers' money being allocated to them. So, providing they have a structured repayment terms, then I think that's a positive, isn't it? But we don't always get to see that, do we? Or we don't always know how much of the loan has actually been paid back so far. But let's hope that there has been a very structured process put in place, and I think that's what everyone would want to hear, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. In the story, it does. I mean, it talks about, obviously, the bank bailouts and other things through the pandemic, COVID period, etc. Not just in the UK, but in general. But it does say here that in JLR's case, that neither side is saying what, if any, conditions attached to the loan guarantee. Sensible ones would include a pledge not to cut jobs, honour all outstanding contracts with suppliers and pay them within a specific time frame. JLR's owner, India's Tata Motors, will presumably need to take out cyber insurance immediately, and that the government ought to make it clear that those who don't will face a high bar for future support. So it's clearly that highlighting there that it should come with some conditions, and obviously he doesn't set a precedent for the future is the key with this one.
Yeah, I think it's because it's an unusual event, and it's had such a large impact on what is a very important company and business for the country and for people, not just in and around the areas of the factories, but all over this country. I would say there are companies that will have some affinities to supplying products or services to the factories.
Yeah.
So I think it's, neither you or I are saying it's right or wrong. We understand it, don't we? And I think that's probably where it's best sort of parked up for now, isn't it, really? Where at least the company should then be is allowed the extra time to, reconfigure the systems and hopefully, as you say, get the appropriate cyber security in place, because these people are obviously not very nice people who do this sort of crime. And it is a crime, obviously. We shouldn't forget that. So we can't condone that, can we? It is a crime. So
yeah, and we know that whether there is a connection or not, it was Tata Consultancies that was also involved supporting both the M&S and Co-op, who were both suffered cyber attacks, and we don't know if there is a connection with that at this stage or not. But I think you're right there. I think the focus is getting the operations back up and running, get the whole supply chain and production lines back up to full operational levels, so that people can get back to work and they can get their processes going again, right through to, you know, the many customers that are probably waiting to pick up their new car and things like this. So you're right. I mean, you know, there's probably a lot of detail in there that we don't know and may never know. But I think the key is back to fully operational. Now, switching over slightly, and you know, we may talk a little bit about this in the second half of the show, David. But AM Online, and this came from the members meeting of the VRA, the Vehicle Remarketing Association, that I chaired last week. But there was a conversation around EV pre-registration activity. And this came from Rupert Pontin, who now represents Brago. And he highlighted that he expects to see an increase in pre-registration of tactical activity, but obviously around the EVs as the manufacturers sort of come into the fourth quarter and chase down the ZEV mandate, which for cars represents 28% this year. And I think as we're talking here, we're waiting for the results of the September market, which we'll probably touch on later. But it'll be interesting when we do see those figures on Monday of next week, what that EV share looks like following September, because that really is the definer for the year now, isn't it? That September month.
Yeah, I think EV has been in the sort of public eye and the sector's eye now for several years, hasn't it? And there's been volatility in the market in the last 3 years, I would think, with prices. So if they're going to have to, the government isn't going to sort of soften that 28%. I think, does it sit at about 22% at the moment?
Something like that, yeah.
22.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem a lot, does it? But always, as you and I both know, percentages can be misleading. It obviously is a concern because there is now, as AM have reported, likelihood of some significant registrations, pre-registrations, and I guess it'll be different for some manufacturers, won't it, than other manufacturers? But so it's to play out, isn't it? That's one that no doubt you and Curtis going forward will be discussing on future shows.
Yeah, it is, and you know, at the meeting as well. I mean, Mike Frizzell, who's the CEO of Leasing.com, shared sort of some of the deals that sit in that space through a PCP and PCH now available, particularly on EVs, and you know, we talked a lot about the Puma Gen E, which is one of two vehicles which are both Fords that has got the tier 1 eligibility for the electric car grant of the 3750, and I think we touched on it last week. The order bank for that has been phenomenal. Orders now going into 2026, but you only need to look at some of the contract deals that have been out for that vehicle in the market, and you can see why the order bank has accelerated so much and so quickly, because it just looks such good value against some of the competition. So as you say there, it'll be interesting when we get those September figures, that one, how the EV market looks like, and two, you know, what share of the market some of the new entrants are now starting to take following, you know, the second plate of the year registration month. So I think we'll dig into them details next week a little bit more, won't we?
I think so. I think it's something for you and Curtis to get your teeth into, isn't it, going forwards?
Yeah. And just before the break, there's been some dealer financial headlines that have hit the news this week. And the first one is that big motoring world profits collapsed more than 1,000%. Yes, I said 1,000%, as battle with founder continues. Don't you just love a car dealer title, David, when they... nice and sensational there from Cargiant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A bit like the title. Well, the finance scandal, the commission scandal. It was never mentioned in the courts, was it? The scandal was never mentioned, but these people seem to like the words to sensationalise it, don't they? So
they do, yeah. So this is the used car supermarket sees losses widen in transformational year, and that the group is locked in the obviously legal battle with its co-founder after he was ousted. That doesn't stop, does it? And that firm blames expansion costs. Yeah, expansion cost reason for its losses extending to 10.7 million there. So I think clearly that there's a lot going on at the big motoring world following that departure of Pete Waddell and the battle that continues in that space.
It would seem that they have more than enough to keep them actively busy for the next foreseeable 6 to 12 months, not least of all turning the losses back into some sort of stability, really, and into profit ultimately, because obviously a business can't survive without making a profit. If it's spending consistently more than its earnings, then they're in trouble, aren't they? So let's hope they can turn it around for everyone's sake, because they do employ quite a few people, don't they?
Exactly, yeah. And Cargiant clocks up at 121.2 million profit in 2024 after a dramatic rise in property value. That's an interesting one. And if you know Cargiant, they sit obviously there within the M25, and this is the restructuring at single site used car dealer saw property value leap 98.8 million, and that the underlying pre-tax profit for the dealer was down on previous year, but that a Cargiant also sold fewer cars and bought in less money than 2023. So obviously, in terms of retailing, it's not a great story, but in terms of profitability, because of the property value rising 98.8 million, that's given a very nice, healthy the balance to that one, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think whilst it's not from the operational course part of the business, it still is. It can still be attributed to the overall success, and obviously against any future borrowings they may wish. If you've got that sort of figure, then that will only help them to do so, won't it? So
yeah, definitely.
So a good news story, because I think have they just got the one location?
Yes, yeah. But they've got a lot of property there and around it. They're very much sewn up a lot of the.
They seem to be a company, don't they? They've been around for 3 or 4 decades. I don't know quite when they were founded, but they've always been there, haven't they? One of the a little bit like Fords of Winsford, aren't they? Really,
yes,
in that respect. Yeah.
And then the final one is that Vindis, and this is we don't talk a lot about Vindis on the podcast, but car dealer Vindis slumps to a 7-figure loss as firm makes changes to senior leadership team, and that the Vindis Group published its financial accounts for 2024. Documents show heavy losses as turnover also declines in what was described as a challenging year. And bosses say that changes were made to leadership team in Q4 in response to numerous issues. So, again, 2024 is a bit of a diverse year, isn't it, from some of the financials that we're starting to see. And we've seen, we're just talking there about Cargiant on the back of the property, but obviously following up there with Vindis, that they've had a bit of a challenging year in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been very candid about their disclosure, and I looked at the mention of staff. Very few people talk about that, don't they? They don't but they acknowledge they've had a sort of higher than normal staff churn, haven't they? Which obviously, as we both know, you have to find the staff, and then you have to hopefully decisions of appointing them are correct, and they need time to settle in, don't they, to the systems and people. So that does have an impact, doesn't it? So a good business, other good businesses, hopefully haven't had that same challenge of staff churn, and are able to carry on and hopefully produce some decent figures, which I think 2024 and 2025. I don't think we should be surprised by more businesses reporting, a downturn in profits. I think there'll be more of those than there will people reporting upturns, I'm afraid, at the moment. So still a long way to go, isn't there? And I think next year we'll be reporting 2025. And again, that's something for you and Curtis.
Yeah.
That's another one, isn't it?
We'll have a look,
So let's hope most people survive. There will be casualties. There have been casualties, haven't there? But let's hope there's not too many more.
Exactly. So we'll be back after the break with further conversation and chat with David, more about the new and used market in general.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed.
So, I mean, David, let's get to your world now. I mean, you know, it's. I think you're celebrating a big year coming up, or around now, in terms of
Yeah, no, it's a 29. I've been going 29 and a half years.
Right.
Going back to my childhood here, when you used to sort of be proud about saying I'm 4.5, not 4. So 29 and a half years.
Yeah.
So February next year will see me entering into my 30th year as Cheshire Cars. So I'm quite pleased and proud about that, because it's not been without its
I was going to
challenges
say,
along the way.
three decades in the sector
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
you know, seen some ups and downs in that
Goodness
period,
me,
I think.
yes. Yeah. I mean, when I started, I had a full head of hair and all my teeth, but not
Think we all?
not
Okay.
saying certainly the hair isn't there anymore. But I've still got my teeth actually, but not my hair. But no, it's been an enjoyable experience, and I think it's, anyone is listening now thinking I just fancy going out on my own. Maybe they're employed in the dealership in whatever capacity, in service or sales department, etc. I think it's, we always say, don't we? Oh, it's hard work. You don't want to do that. And, I've said that myself a few
I
times,
bet you
but,
have, yeah.
but there is always opportunities, isn't there? This is what's so great about this industry of ours. It's so diverse, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we always say, don't we, that once it's in your blood, it's in your blood, isn't it? You and I come across a lot of people that, they just love it. I mean, it is that kind of industry. It has its ups and downs, it has its challenges, but it's an industry that people do love once you are in it. It's very difficult to get away from. I mean, I've come away from the dealer world and kind of stepped over the fence a little bit into the valuation space, and then I've stepped a little bit further into a slightly different fence into what I do now. But it's still automotive, and anybody that's been on any Teams calls with me, they'll see my office and where I operate and stuff. I just love the industry. We do live and breathe the industry, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to love what you're doing. And if you can love what you're doing, I think 20, 30, 40, 50 years is possible, isn't it? Providing good health, of course.
Yes.
And I mean, I know a few operators that are touching 70s, mid 70s, and still loving doing what they're doing. In fact, we're going out on our bi-monthly Motor Mouse meeting for the meal this weekend, and one of the guys there will be in his mid 70s, and a great guy, he's got a great business in the Manchester area. So I think, you do have to be resilient, don't you? You have to be resilient. And you have to be open to change as well. And I think I've been able to do both. I think the success of the business has been able to adapt to delivering cars, 14 years ago?
Yeah.
Way before COVID, etc. Not being put off by distance selling regulations. Understand them and apply them to your business model. Make sure that you protect your business and the customer and the client as well, because the client is altogether important, very much part of the journey. And obviously, we have always become, we always have been and will still be known for preparation, aren't we? So, preparation, the amount of detail we go into with each vehicle is, I believe, second to none. It's what stands the business out, really.
And talking about the market and the vehicles, I mean, obviously, we had Jeremy Yeh on recently talking about the September going into October trade values from a cap HPI perspective, which, marginally increase, and obviously we talked through some of the detail of why that was for this time of the year, etc. And only this week, I think Darren Martin, who does a bit of work with Picasso, was talking about the retail market, that there is a slight nudge up now, which was the bit that, you and I spoke about earlier on in the week, that, at the end of the day, the retail now has got to sort of reflect that trade strength that's appearing in the market. But you're in the middle of this because, I mean, you were just saying about that prep and everything else, but you're outsourcing vehicles, trying to get these vehicles at the right price, right condition, age, mileage points. But at the same time, getting the retail price and the market for that reflecting what you are delivering, one in terms of Cheshire Cars yourself, the levels that you put into these vehicles to get them to that standard. How are you finding the market now? I mean, it's been an interesting year so far, and we're just moving into the fourth quarter now, and we talk a lot about shortage of supply of stock in that, particularly in that 3 to 5 year old marketplace. What are you seeing and hearing at the minute?
Well, I've pivoted over several years, Phil, bit by bit each year, to really sourcing very, very exclusive vehicles with very good spec. And, you know, those vehicles are quite rare. So there may be, say, 100 M Sport BMWs, but I want the ones with the pan roofs and the cameras and other features like lane assist, etc., the M Pro packs. And so I think the knowledge that I've gained over the years in the trade and listening to people, because I'm still learning every single day, enables me to offer vehicles, to know what to go into plus book, so go way over book for something. So we wouldn't buy an SUV unless it had a panoramic sunroof. That's a standard feature on that car. We know that our buyers do want that standard of level of trim. So if we can't offer it, then yes, we'll sell the car at some point, but it won't be quick enough. It will be too slow. It won't move quickly. But if you've got a forecourt with maybe 100 spaces, then you need to buy that car, don't you? Because you need to fill that space. So the dynamics are different for everyone, which makes the market, you have to be on your toes every single day. I mean, I'm generally working to some point on a Saturday and Sunday, so looking at stock, where it is and whether it's something we would be interested in, and then doing the background to that stock, retailing back, but within a parameter of the spec of the car. So the professional resellers and wholesale buyers will know the market space, and just how much that vehicle might be worth. And of course, without mentioning too many names, we have Auto Trader, for example, who give their opinion on the valuation. So that's another pinch point, isn't it? If you're not quite experienced, and I mean this respectfully, I mean no disrespect at all to anyone. I think sometimes we can get carried away with that, can't we? Those market values. But they're an important part of my business. I don't ignore them. I do build them into the overall analysis.
It's a consideration, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day,
Yes.
you need to know what the current trade value or
Yes.
wholesale value is for a vehicle. You need to know what that retail market looks like in terms of pricing. But again, I think to your point, you've got years of experience that understand the value of that vehicle, right down to which wheels it has on it,
Absolutely.
the colour, the interior colour, what spec it should have, what it needs to attract the buyer. And that's unique because, as you say, those vehicles, as you say, it's 1 in 100 cars that you're looking for that has that right colour combination and spec combination that that if you can find that, it demands a certain retail price and it demands a certain profit margin for that.
Yes.
If you go to that level of detail.
It's almost like having a halo placed on the car. You almost know that car will be around for maybe a few weeks. I mean, recently we had a Mini Countryman JCW, and we just with the cream leather, which Mini called grey. It was more cream than grey, but anyway, but that was sold immediately, and we could have sold that several times over. And those are the halo cars that you need to find, you need to come across, you need to acknowledge them and be aware of them, and price them accordingly. So this year has been more of those cars, so I'm thankful to say that we've had more opportunities to do those cars and get them and secure them. And we just put a Mercedes on now, which we feel is a halo car. So yeah, it works, and there are some good operators, Phil, as you well know, that are making the business work based on those principles. So we've come to the table and we're joining those people. We need to keep our eyes peeled at all times,
Yeah, and that's down to mileage and ownership and history and everything else that you have your standards. So anybody that you and I talk all the time that you have repeat customers coming back because one, they know you and they love your service and what you deliver. But second to that, they know the type of vehicles that you're going to be able to either source for them or have
Yes.
available for them to buy.
Well, that's another add-on to the business that's come along in the last decade, is the sourcing side of it. It's very important to me, and it does add a very significant amount of profit to the bottom line. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going down to Surrey to hopefully come back in a car that I've sourced for one of my clients who lives now in Torquay. So we'll be delivering that to him the week after, and that will be the family have had, I think, 9 or 10 cars from us over the years. So yeah, it's an incredibly important part of any used car dealers, but independent dealers, keeping hold of your customers and informing them of what services you can provide and delivering what you say, really, isn't it? I mean, it's just good common business practice, really.
Yeah.
And the time we take on any given car can just depend on the size of the car. I mean, I've just posted something online with the Mercedes. It took me 8 hours to wash it down. Now I'm sure there'll be people listening to this think 8 hours.
Yeah, they want to get through the valet bay in and out
Yeah,
in 20 minutes. They want to get it done and on the forecourt.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any paint left on it? I don't. But I wouldn't say it's right or wrong. But for our business model, it's absolutely right that we take that level of care. We will take as long as it takes. That's the motto. If it takes us 4 hours, it takes us 4. If it takes us 8, it takes us 8. And we had one recently that I bought back off somebody who I sold last year to, and we just literally needed to wash it down. No preparation other than washing it and hoovering it. So that was the opposite side of it. So yeah.
And over the years we've talked about EVs and the changing landscape of the market, and more recently you are now getting a little bit more involved with those hybrid
Yeah.
and new energy vehicles, be it full EV or range extended or whatever. How's it going? Because that was an area that took you a while to sort of
It
start
did.
to dab your toe into, and a little bit sort of just wait until the timing was right
Yeah.
for you.
Well, you know something, Phil. I was thinking about this, and 2017. So that's what 8 years ago was the very first time that we bought an EV.
Hmm.
It was a Renault Zoe, and a chap had bought the car for some. He was staying in the UK from Australia for 3 months, and he bought this car to get him around the country. And we ended up buying it off him and selling it to a doctor on the Isle of Dogs in London. And I thought, wow, that's gone really, really quick. And the data on that car, the percentage of interest was something like 2,500% over anything else. And it was 80 miles range.
Yeah.
It was incredibly low range. But then it hasn't really taken off for us in the way it has for others. But we've had a Tesla Y recently, 1-year-old Tesla Y. That was, again, very much like the Mini, could have sold it several times. And I commented to someone, I can't think who it was, but I did make a comment that I felt that Tesla now, used price-wise, we're going to rise because obviously they've been hit heavily with the depreciation for the last 18 months.
Yeah.
I personally felt that the bottom of that for Tesla had been reached, and now it was on the bounce. It had hit the bottom and it was going to bounce back, not all the way by any means, and I think that's what I've seen in the wholesale market for EV is strengthening. So, yeah, but again, it's down to spec, isn't it? And the range. The range is very, very important because I think at the moment, probably the most in car at the moment is the Renault 5, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah.
EV.
Yeah.
I think the order banks are quoting 2 and 3 month delivery, so that's a city car really. But I think there are 2 lots of battery capacities on that car. So the Tesla that we retailed recently was a long range one.
Yeah.
But again, long range one isn't necessary for everyone, is it? So I think you do need an amount of specialist knowledge and to do your research in the EV sector. I don't think you can just go into it without a clear understanding of it. And I do think it's prevented, and I include myself, the uncertainty, the volatility of the used car wholesale prices. So if you buy a Tesla in 1 month, is it going to drop £1,000 in a month? Is it going to lose £2,000 in a month? Or is it going to stay stable? And I think now we're starting to see them creep, or they're stable now, in my opinion, and they're rising. So could be something for listeners here to, if they're going to go into the EV market, it's probably as about as good a time as any, potentially. But again, it's something for you and Curtis.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one because I mean, in terms of when we talk about franchise dealers versus independent dealers, you are clearly the independent dealer. You don't stock high volumes of vehicles. It's you in the main. You've got your outsourcing and doing the retailing. That it is the independents that are a little bit more cautious, a little bit more nervous of stocking EVs. I think there's stats out there in the market that I think the independents, less than 20% of independents stock an EV, whereas it's over 80% for franchise dealers. And clearly, franchise dealers are slightly different because they'll probably represent a brand or a manufacturer that has EV. So by default, they're going to naturally stock used EVs. But I think it is clear now, speaking with you, that you've not got a forecourt of vehicles, but you are now, getting presented and looking at vehicles that, as you say, some of these EV products look such good value as
Absolutely.
a used proposition with it's more than adequate in terms of its range. It's more than, adequate, in terms of it's got the spec, and they do have high spec, don't they, in terms of that tech.
Yeah, I think I went on a driving day last year to Blenheim Blenheim Palace, and there was 20 vehicles, EVs, for us to drive. And yeah, I mean, they've all got the good technology. The technology's there. I think the Tesla is probably my favourite, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah.
But like somebody else may favour, say, BYD or Audi or Mercedes. I think the legacy manufacturers are having a very tough time, personally. Just looking at the press releases that have been coming out and what's on YouTube with on certain media channels covering EV. So it's going to be an interesting period of time. I think it's going to be very, very interesting for the the legacy manufacturers, as we call them, because it's gone from engine technology, hasn't it, to technology.
Yes.
Just technology, software technology. Yes, it's still got a steering wheel and wheels and brakes, etc. But you can drive an EV around anywhere if you've driven one without touching the brakes.
Yeah.
So the regenerative braking is so powerful on these EVs. So I think there's interesting times ahead, and we're beginning to see the German manufacturers, the Mercedes, the BMW, the Audi manufacturers, and obviously Porsche in there as well. Didn't I see something where they're ceasing EV production for now, Paul?
Yeah, it's slowing down. I think I think Europe is stagnant now in terms of that EV growth, and some of the German manufacturers, as you alluded to there, have talked about production slowdowns and things like that. So it is interesting, but I mean, without promoting brands by any means, I mean, you talk about these new entrants, and I've had the pleasure this week of seeing the Shanghai, the new Deepal product that's just landed in mid-September. That sub 40 grand on the road. I think it's 39,900, something like that. Mid-size vehicle. The looks and feels of it at that front end, and the styling, styled in Italy. It's R&D facility here in the UK, or the transmission and everything. It's it looks a lot of car for the money when you start to put it up against some of the competition that's in the marketplace. And I think that's the point now. It's well built, and it's not, the others are the same. I think the market is shifting, and you and I were chatting, and it's, you look at it today, but actually, what does this thing look like in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 4 years' time as a used vehicle proposition? I mean, you've got to think about that as a used car retailer.
Yeah.
What am I going to be retailing in the next 12, 24, 36 months when some of this new product that's coming into the market, be it from the traditional OEMs through that Renault 5 that you've mentioned and others, through to what's happening with Tesla and some of those new entrants, be it BYD, be it Shanghai or Jacob and Moda and Chery and others, that what does that used market look like going forward? We'll be fascinated. But just to sort of finish off and close down a little bit, we're heading now. We've got September under done, end of that third quarter. We know that stock isn't necessarily becoming more readily available maybe until next year, which is when production started to recover a little bit and volume started to go back into the marketplace. But what's your view now? I mean, you've got the next 3 months, October, November, and December to think about as a retailer in terms of product buying and retailing. How do you think now, on the back of strong used car values that we've seen in the last couple of months, through to a slight indication that retail is now starting to reflect that? But what's your view now for the next 3 months, David?
I'm actually optimistic, and I think well, I'll tell you why I'm optimistic. I think for the dealers that are knowledgeable and know the market, I think they'll just about fill the forecourts, the stock, with as good or close to what they need. They will have to have some fillers, some stock fillers that maybe they wouldn't normally go into. But if it's prepared right, it's priced, it's purchased right at wholesale, they should be able to move that vehicle on within the sort of required 6 to 8 weeks, 12-week period. So I think we will be focused on having a strong end to the year. We have got some sort of new ideas that we've been working on like you said, into the EV and hybrid sectors, and we're just watching that. I've known, obviously, for a Bath, the 595 Bath models over the last 3 or 4 years, and we've still got some of those. But I think because they don't make the petrol engine anymore, we're going to transition into something just a little bit different, and you could see some Teslas appearing on the forecourt in the coming weeks and months, so keep your eyes on that. I think they're very good value. So I think those that are proactive and are open-minded will have a good end to the year, I think. And as we go into 2026, we should be coming, into a period of a little bit more stock. But strong values are good for the used car market in many ways, because it means that if you don't sell that car in a sort of 8 to 12-week window, if that is your window, the vehicle you could move on in wholesale, couldn't you?
Yes.
And some dealers are actively doing that, and we've done that in the past as well. If somebody rings up and inquires about a car from another dealership, we actively get involved in a constructive discussion about wholesaling the car to them. So I'm optimistic. I think it will be good, not without challenges, but I think we've got enough behind us now to make the year finish to a positive, come to a positive end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the signs of stability, or if we turn to what might be described as a more normal seasonal marketplace, and as you say there, that if we are starting to see a little bit of signs of the retail market starting to reflect some of the strength that we're seeing in trade, that means we're getting that margin retention back again as well, because key for retailers is that margin. But to your point there, that when you start to see stability and normalised seasonality, it gives you the confidence that, as you say, you can buy that product without the risk of a total collapse in the value that is the bit that puts a lot of people off. So I agree with that. And I mean, just finally, David, I mean, a huge thank you for jumping in. Whilst Curtis enjoys a sun, a few bike rides and a few beers, I suspect, this week. It's always a pleasure having you on. And congratulations on the 29.5 years at this
Yes,
point,
and
and approaching that 30th year. What a
yes, thank you. And I would just like to say to the listeners, well, not to listeners, but to yourself as well, and listeners will hear it, obviously. I did have a granddaughter almost a year ago, so she's
Yes.
fast approaching her 1 year anniversary. So, Frankie Rose Billsborough, welcome to your first year on planet Earth.
Thank you, Rose Billsborough. Beautiful, eh? What a thing to talk about. So,
Yeah.
huge thank you, David, again, and always pleasure to have you on, and we should get you on with Curtis and me. Well, that's all we've got time for today. So next week, Curtis will be back on the podcast after his short break there. And again, huge thank you to David for jumping in.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines on Monday morning. To make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.